Welcome to Jersey Justice, a civil law podcast, solving the world's problems one podcast at a time.
So just real quick, back to the SEAL swim before we go to the
The evolution of technology.
the point that we had about free speech. The thing with the SEAL swim is it's not that challenging because you choreograph it with the currents, which is really critical. If you didn't catch the currents right, you'd have a lot of scattered people. You'd have a lot of lost bathers. So the way you choreograph it, I don't find it that difficult. But what does get difficult and gets nasty is when you get within about 40 feet of the dock on Lower Manhattan.
Yes.
You ever be on the subway when it has rained a lot and you get
Not
that
a good
urine
thing,
smell?
Not a good thing.
Yeah, and you're like, you're swimming it, but it's cool. Like it's awesome.
If there's 3 inches of rain more than a day before, we'll cancel it.
Oh,
Because there's
of
so
that.
much
Like out of the East River, they have a plant there. And
Yeah.
The way it works is
But doing that SEAL swim it's amazing. Like I look at like things in my life, and I look at the day I got married, and when I was kind of tearing when I saw Dodie down the hall with her dad, and I start to tear, and I think about when I had my kid's first sonogram, and then my first kid was born. And I think about super cool things in life, and then I think about this 15-mile road that I do in Cape May to raise money for spinal cord injuries with the Satnick Foundation. It's called the Cape to Cape Row. It's a 15-mile row. And I also think of the SEAL swim that I did as the
awesome.
coolest things in life.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't it like career phenomenal personal injury attorney, and he just listed these things out, and none of them were like this
dangerous.
massive verdict I got. This
No,
what like he's talking about seeing his kid, like his wife, and it's like
but just to honor, like,
$2
like
million.
no, like just to be around, and not to, I'm not patronizing or any of that stuff, but like I didn't serve, and I'm not going to say I didn't have the opportunity to serve, because clearly I did, and I just didn't. And so it's an honor to be like around high functioning guys like that. And I'll never forget, I was on the deck of one of the barges, because the way the SEAL swim works, obviously, as you know, Bill, but for some of the people, is it starts off with a run in Jersey City at the Empty Sky Memorial, which is a memorial to the 9/11 victims.
That's right.
And we run a mile. It's a flag run. It's a super cool patriotic flag run. And there's helicopters. And then we muster, and then you jump in the Hudson River a mile down, and you swim. We swim, I think it's about a mile out towards Ellis Island.
Your Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then past Ellis Island. And it's, I mean, if anyone's lucky enough to do that swim, you should take the opportunity. And then you're swimming and you see the Statue of Liberty. It's the coolest thing.
it is.
So then you get on the barges, and I'm like, I trained for it. I swam a lot, and you have to do 100, 300 push-ups and 100 pull-ups.
100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups, Statue of Liberty, honor our nation's freedoms and civil liberties, pop back in the water, hit Ellis Island, 100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups, honor our nation's diversity, all the men and women who came to our country for a better life, pop back in the water, swim all the way to South Cove Marina, get decon, get a head count, grab a bunch of flags, do a flag run in the World Trade Center, PAPD, FDNY, Pipers are playing for us as we enter, do 100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups in the World Trade Center at the first responder statue to honor all those lost in 9/11 and all those who put on the line for country.
Yeah, and it's such like a unifying thing. Like, it's a unity thing. Like, you could be like, oh, Trump and oh, Biden and this and that. Like, all that stuff, in my experience, when I did it, it just melts away, and it's like a unity thing. And I think that's awesome. You got to get coverage beyond Fox News for it, though.
you don't feel
You
like
know.
you get a ton of coverage
Well, it's
for
a
it.
couple things. Reached out extensively to other networks like CNN, this and that. The way I do it is I delegate it. I call it team leaders, and I have my team leaders because it's a massive event. And
Do you run it, Bill? Like you organize it?
I'm the lead SEAL and primary director, organizer, but I work with NSF
Wow.
now. Jeff Leard helps me out a lot. I have a captain of volunteers, Ed Harrer. He helps me a lot. But yeah, I'm the quarterback. But reached out to those other networks and wasn't successful. And I actually, initially, my focus, and I had Jason Redman. He's a renowned SEAL. He's really good in PR, and he was my team leader for that. And he's been on CNN a bunch of times.
He's a great guy, and he's an American hero.
Yeah, he is. He is.
I recognize that name, and I don't
Yeah.
know why I would.
He's a
He's a-
wounded combat veteran,
He's a
top Navy SEAL.
beautiful
Wow.
guy. And so one of the things that happened is didn't get any traction. Now, Navy SEAL foundations made great efforts on their own, and they have extensive media contacts on it. And initially, when I tried it, my goal was, you know what, if they could cover something like this, it would be because that audience is actually the audience that I felt kind of needs that medicine more than anything. Like,
Yeah.
our country is a beautiful place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of beautiful people who put it on the line for a country. And so I wanted to promote that, but it got shut down. So what happened with me, guys, is I shifted focus. I was like, all right, I'm not going to waste any time on them anymore. Fox News and Newsmax, every year they come through. That's where I'm focusing. I'm
Yeah.
not wasting.
I'll tell you, I never sensed any tinge of politics there. There was no
That's
politics flags.
awesome.
All I saw was American flags and military flags.
Of all the issues, and this is, I'm not just saying this because we're sitting here and you're a veteran and things, but there's so many different political issues where you can see, all right, I understand why this side's on in this camp, but thanking, supporting our veterans, you know, people who have served for our country, like the fact that we can sit here and express our viewpoints, you know, people have gone and fought to defend those freedoms, and you talk about the Constitution, I think they're hanging up behind us. The fact that we can have these conversations and sit home and watch our TVs and not have to worry about, you know, bombs exploding outside, it's because of you guys who have served. So that shouldn't be a political issue. It really should be a more unifying thing, and it's kind of a shame that it's not out there. It looks like that's a huge part of what you do, is trying to support veterans and get the word out there for events like your swim.
Well, I kind of look at it as it's like anything else, right? For so long, veterans have been getting kicked in the face, really.
And Bill, I don't want to cut you off because I know this is a huge thing for you, but like, why is that? Because I think even in my town, I'm from Wall Township, they erect this statue of a guy who served in World War II, and he's so revered, and everyone, like all these books that come out, it's like World War II, Band of Brothers. If someone served in World War II, they're such a hero. Then you fast forward, I know I'm skipping over smaller ones, but you get to like Vietnam, and it seems like people are less kind of celebrated and revered. And then you fast forward to the conflicts that are going on now, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan, and it seems like there's not just this same ideology we have with people who served in World War II, where it's like, thank you, you're American heroes. Like, why do you think that is? And
Well, I think it stems from a couple of different things. I think one of the things that stemmed was the political advocacy in the Vietnam War. What they were very successful is the warfare in Vietnam. We were very successful. Where we weren't so successful, as far as, you know, there was what happened over there after we left. South Vietnam became communist. All those individuals who stood up for us, what happened to them was horrible. The same thing what happened in Afghanistan.
yeah,
All those Afghanistanis that stood by us, trying to, you know, advocate for, think about now women, the way women are treated there, and it's just horrible what's happening over there. So there's a couple, like a lot of things, there's different variables that come into play. And so in Vietnam, it started, they were very successful as the professors in the left movement, they had a captive audience that they had a lot of influence that they could mobilize. And the other thing they were very successful was they used technology. Martin Luther King used technology in Montgomery, Alabama. What he did there was he knew that when they would come march, that the way those police would overreact, everybody else would be in their TV screens. That was one of the biggest things that he did, because now I'm looking at this on my TV. I'm not down in Alabama, but I can see that's wrong. And he mobilized American business. He mobilized the American will that this was just wrong and we're not tolerating anymore. Well, what the the anti-Vietnam movement did the same thing with the protest and TV. They mobilized the TV cameras, they mobilized the college campuses, and they were able to end the Vietnam War. But what happened was and it's okay to protest violence. It's okay to protest American foreign policy. But what they did is they demonized the veterans coming back. They got spitting on veterans, treating them like garbage.
Yeah.
And
a lot of guys too who weren't they were drafted. You know, it's not like they chose to serve it. You know.
well, to tell you the truth, if I was in Vietnam, I would enlist it because the communism and Marxism and the totalitarianism that they have over there, and all those people that are oppressed, and the same thing in Afghanistan. Instead of Marxism, now it's Sierra law. It's not a place you want to visit.
Yeah.
Now, I think Vietnam now has actually become pretty capitalized, but one of the things at the time that wasn't the case. But what the issue we have now is they demonized veterans. They demonized them. They made them antisocial. They made them unwelcome. And that's the same thing they did to the police. And now what did they do with the police is they with the BLM movement, they had a weak presidential candidate. Biden was a weak presidential candidate then, and he's a weak president. He's even worse now. But what they did is they need to mobilize their base. He wasn't that appetizing to other Americans. And so one of the things, in my opinion, that they did is they highlighted some minute racial incidents to highlight the base. And what they did is they pushed it to such an extreme because they needed to get people riled up to act, is that it made it in almost every major city in our nation became unsafe at times. You had major riots. You had the BLM cost, and insurance claims alone, I think it's over $2 billion of damages. Huh. I think 25 Americans died. That's the outcome justifies the means. And if you look at what's happening now, first, they'll replace the American flag with, there's a big movement in the woke part of the Democratic Party that you talk about that Constitution. They don't believe in they do not practice free speech. They'll cancel you at college campus. They'll cancel you on social media. They don't practice free speech. They'll try to destroy your livelihood. That's what cancel culture is. It's political discrimination, and I've experienced it. So what happens is they'll replace, they're anti-American now. You look at they'll replace the American flag with any possible flag. First, it'll be the rainbow flag. Then it'll be the Ukrainian flag. Then it'll be the BLM flag. Now it's the Palestinian flag. Don't worry, give it a couple months, it'll be some other flag. Their end goal is, in my opinion, is complete dominance in all state and federal government. And to be sincere, when you talk about a lot of these college campuses, it's political indoctrination. It's a huge part. It's a huge issue right now that we have in our country, because if you're a professor and you have a difference of opinion, you will be shut down. You'll be pushed out. And if you look at, you talked about the case, what was it? The case where they made corporations, they said that they were private entities.
Yeah, the Citizens United, unlimited money in politics.
That's right. So guess what else they did? There's a series of cases now where basically with these big tech companies, where basically you can show with the Twitter files, where Elon Musk showed that you had the FBI, you have the DHS, and you had multiple other entities that would regularly meet with the FBI and regarding disinformation, right? Where they would basically shut down like the Hunter Biden story and things like that. And then where they would shut down others, basically political perspectives out there. And a lot of these appeal cases, what they said is when they were challenged in court, they said, well, the First Amendment doesn't apply to these private companies. It only applies to government actors, right? And it can apply under the 14th Amendment if there's joint activity. And and that was the nexus. And so a lot of the decisions found in these courts, and when we look at our judges, and at the higher level of the court, the more elite the atmosphere, right? They're operating at a level that I've never operated on, and circles that I've never been on. They represent, in my opinion, you look at some of the decisions like Citizens United, and in these cases, of course, they didn't. Guess what? They didn't find. They didn't find a nexus. They couldn't find that. Oh, there was joint activity. But if you look at the Twitter files, we know there was absolutely joint activity.
I agree with you on that. I think, generally speaking, I think the control of social media and that's a bad thing. Freedom of speech, I agree with that. But as you know from law school and everything, freedom of speech has its limits. So I think that arose from when you had that January 6th attack on the Capitol, and Trump's on his cell phone.
When you say the word attack, I think they opened the doors. I represent a couple individuals there. I've seen them. The doors were open. I've seen videos where they literally escort them in.
I get you. There was at least some attack, though.
Nobody had weapons. It wasn't an armed insurgency for sure. There was some knuckleheads, but that was not an armed insurgency.
All right, but there was definitely some people were definitely attacking the Capitol and breaking in.
I don't.
You know, where they took the flag and they're smashing the window and then they.
Okay. Was there trespass? Was there maybe one or two B&Es? Yes. Was there plenty of incidents where they were escorted in?
And
yes.
You had that guy with the hell with the horns and all that shit.
He was
and then
he was an imbecile.
They're in the Senate chamber and all this.
Yeah, but it wasn't an armed insurgency.
So
nobody with AKs, no one with M4s.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God.
That wasn't armed insurgency.
Thank God. So.
Thank God.
Yeah. So I think that free speech started where they shut down Trump's accounts so that he could stop the people from continuing what they were doing. I think that's where that arose from. Because if you see in what was it in Somalia? No, not Somalia. What was that? Rwanda.
The Houthis and
So if you watch the movie Hotel, if you watch Hotel Rwanda. So let me ask you a question. So like I understand free speech and all that. So in Hotel Rwanda, in that movie, and it's what were you saying in the movie?
I think it's like the Houthis
tribal,
and the Tutus or something. It's the difference between the way someone's nose look, essentially, is what it came down to.
Okay.
It's just major apartheid.
And what you were saying how they dehumanize the other so that it makes it easier to kill. And then the president or whoever gets on the radio in Rwanda and he goes, okay, and he sends the signal. We're going to now go kill the cockroaches. We're going to get the cockroaches. The vermin and all.
So scary.
And then that's when the slaughter starts. So let me ask you a question in free speech land. Yeah. If you could have pressed a button and shut off that radio communication and stop his free speech, do you see? And I think
when you say free speech, there's nothing I heard. Now,
when you take the spectrum, okay, there's a spectrum.
Yeah, there absolutely is.
Okay, this is like. I want to speak and say that beach badges at the beach should be free. Okay, that's like your most no problem free speech. And then we go from and what's the big example in law school of free speech?
Fire in a crowded theater.
Right. And so everyone agrees you don't have a right to yell fire in a theater.
Unless there's a fire.
Unless there's a fire and cause a tramp. So and then I think at that end of the spectrum of free speech, you could also say when the guy gets on the radio and says it's now time to eliminate the cockroaches, which is engage in genocide in Rwanda, we would also agree that that's on the. And so I think everyone would agree you could shut the button off, and you would stop his free speech from doing that to prevent a genocide. And so where does shutting off Trump's Twitter account in the middle of the January 6th events?
There's nothing.
Where does that fall on the spectrum?
There's a couple things.
And I think that's where that's where this whole thing with social media and controlling people's Twitter accounts arose from. But I 100% agree with you that the pendulum swung far the other way, and now people are getting banned from LinkedIn for saying maybe we should think twice about getting jabbed with this experimental vaccine.
You could lose your job if you didn't get vaccinated.
Oh my God, yeah. So how do we balance that? And along those the same lines, like you're saying, well, the universities are controlled by a lot of woke. If you had right, but if you were king, would you eliminate all that? And then who appoints the people in the schools to run them? And would you get rid of woke ideology in the country? Because who was it that said, I might not agree with a word of what you're saying, but I will defend to the death your right to say it?
Well, those are all valid points and a lot of great questions there you raised at me. I think I want to prioritize by by precedence of the greatest effect. I think first is regarding the example with Rwanda and the cockroaches, where basically you have a leader that's absolutely saying, let's do horrible things, right? I think anyone like there's a movie and I forget what it's called, but it's about this guy King Baldwin. And King Baldwin was one of the last kings in Jerusalem, and and he was actually called the Leper King. And he beat Solomon in a great battle before, but Solomon later conquers Jerusalem. But he's talking to somebody in this scene, and they're playing chess, and he says, you can be controlled by kings, but in the end, you're responsible for your soul, and you can in the end say, so-and-so told me to do this or that, right? And so there's a certain point that I think every man has to make. And I'll be sincere, I was a bodyguard for the Deputy Prime Minister of Iraq, Burhan Salah, and he was an intellectual, and I actually thought in that world his compass was kind of geared right. If he was going to be shot at, and thank God he didn't, I was not going to jump in front of him and get killed for him. I was going to lay down a bunch of bullets, but in my head, I knew 100%.
Were you expected to, like a Secret Service agent would?
That's exactly what I was. Now, a lot of the stuff I did like reconnaissance surveillance. I did QRFs, but
what's QRF?
Quick Reactionary Force.
Okay,
basically, he's out meeting some people, and I'm off in the distance.
Right.
And so, why do I say that? Because I say this. In the end, no one can tell me this or that. If I think something's wrong, I have a duty as a human being to stand up to it.
Right.
Now, so of course I say shut that stuff down.
Yeah.
But what I say is, this. That never happened with Trump. There was nothing he said in anywhere that can say that he said that.
Well, you got to fight like hell, and then you're going to march to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. Where the hell? I thought he was going to be there with him.
Well, there's nothing he said that in any way they can have a right to
and
march.
Giuliani with the what did he say? Democracy by combat or something? What the hell is that?
One of the things I learned as a lawyer, is never say anything that you don't know the facts to. So I don't know if he said that.
Right.
I do know it. I do know that the left plays up on things extraordinary. Like that march on D.C. was a bunch of clowns, and they hammed that up big time, and they used that for great propaganda. Because guess what? The message they were able to show is, look, you lost the moral high ground here.
Yeah.
And I think for intellectuals, it's very important to hold the moral high ground. And so that's number one. I don't think there's nothing I saw. There's no evidence. There's nothing I heard. There's nothing I read that showed that Trump anywhere remotely crossed that line. Now, what do I think?
What line?
The line of where his speech should
inciting
have been shut
violence.
Down. Yes,
It
wasn't there. And so they used that as justification to shut down a president. Trump isn't a leader of the Republican Party. He is, but he's more a leader of a movement.
What about
And they shut down his ability to reach billions of people.
In my opinion, thank God at that time.
I disagree with you.
But as advertised, this was
Yeah.
this is where we were supposed to.
I'm watching the tennis match now.
Yeah. I didn't want to get like false advertising here. So, but loyalty. When I have the law firm and run the law firm, you might have some employees not the best, whatever. But like I can count on one hand in 15 years the amount of people I've fired, right? Because I have this thing of like, hey, you're on the team, you're with us, let's go, let's lock arms, and loyalty, Yeah, Mike Pence. We're getting. Let's hang Mike Pence. Let's put it. Where's his loyalty to the guy? Why? Why? Because he didn't declare him the winner. That's just crazy. Like Mike Pence. Never a fan of Mike Pence, but I think he'll go down in history as one of the, John F. Kennedy had Profiles in Courage or whatever. He wrote a book about Profiles in Courage, about people standing up for what is right in politics. I mean, I have so much respect for Mike Pence that he did the right thing. You can't just say, yeah, sorry, we're going to get rid of those votes and we're going to declare my Trump the winner. I mean, and then because of that, he says, yeah, let him go, and and like didn't he say something like, oh, well, see, that's what he gets for not supporting me.
Yeah.
And then Mike Pence is like held up in the freaking basement of the Capitol building. Mm-hmm. And they got the gallows out there. And what's Trump doing for 3 hours? He's like watching TV, like watching it all go down. And thankfully, and when you say, look, there's no evidence he incited, okay, I hear what you're saying. And he did, to your point, actually tell them to go home at the end of the day, which is the proper thing to do. And that supports what you're saying. But he should have done
very
it.
tongue
He
in
should have done it
cheek.
earlier. But where's the loyalty to your vice president? I'd be like, leave my vice president alone.
There's a couple of things. So one is regarding Pence. I gave that story before. There's a certain point where you got to stand by what you believe in, and that point, I think that's what he did.
Right.
Right. Now, as Trump, who picked him to be his VP, as Trump, who absolutely believed that that election was rigged, and he's not alone. Many people have serious questions.
Yeah, but the
marks
best
about that
liars convince themselves.
election. I think
The best liars. You probably learned that from espionage, spy. Did you get training if you ever get caught in combat? If you ever get your name, rank, and serial
escape and
number?
evade and stuff. No, to be sincere, I didn't. I was a direct action guy, and the
Yeah.
other thing was, that you didn't want to be a SEAL and let them have your body over there,
Right.
right? So, like literally, I know another guy that I was with, and we kind of had a deal with each other that, we'd make sure that would never happen to us.
Right. I hear you.
So what I mean by that is, I can understand how Pence felt, and I can understand how Trump. He felt like, look, this was corrupt and rigged. They stole this election, and I'm going to do every legal means I possibly can to fight for it. And my VP's not going along. I can see that. Now, the one thing when I think about Pence, was, Trump is kind of like me. There's nobody who, like McCarter and Inglis. I got into it with Chris Christie on a very public verbal dispute. I've been known to be outspoken. There's nobody who, and a lot of SEALs are outspoken. You can't expect me not to be outspoken and be who I am. It's the same way with Trump. Pence knew what he was getting into with Trump. I actually think that down the road, I think at that time Pence stood up. I think down on the road they got something on Pence because he totally rolled over. But I don't think that's really so much of the issue between the disagreements between. I think I agree with you. I think in the moment, Pence stood up for what he believed in, and it was a hard decision for him.
Yeah.
I don't, but you can't default Trump for thinking, hey, we talk about loyalty. Like here's a guy who absolutely to his heart believes that election was stolen, and his VP's not running and gunning with him. So I don't know. I think it's the bigger issue at stake is where we disagree with, is you had a movement, a guy who is the president and really the leader of a big American movement, and actually it's more than America. It's almost like a global movement, and they shut down his account on billions to reach billions of people. And you think about, we were talking about Trump. Since he came down that escalator, they spent, I don't know how many, maybe $1 billion, millions of dollars with the whole Russian
Is that when he
collusion.
said the Mexicans are like they're all rapists and murderers?
Oh,
Was that time or was that another time?
Oh, so now what you're doing is your tactic is.
I'm just wondering if
I'm
he-
trying. So I
if
want
that was
to
the time.
explain my perspective to the tactic here. My perspective is I'm showing how, from the moment he came to Escalator, they had millions and millions and millions of dollars of investigations where they had this whole fake dossier and everything else on this Russian collusion, investigation after investigation to handicap his run as a his whole
I
presidential
agree
run.
with that.
And then
And I think they're
and
doing the
take-
same thing to Bobby Kennedy, but keep going.
And then in turn, what do you do? You mentioned a controversial statement that he made, and you know what, he did make it. And when he makes statements like that, he puts his foot in his mouth, because what he does is he comes across as not as a reasonable actor. And then the other thing he does is he plays into negative stereotypes that his opposition is absolutely going to exploit on. Now, is Mexico under the influence of huge organized criminal cartels?
Oh God, yes.
Yes. Do they and are they having a influence with a lot of things coming across the border, including people and trafficking and narcotics? 100%.
But I'll tell you, I think the vast majority of those Mexican citizens coming across the border are nice families escaping the cartels. And I can tell you that
agree.
because we represent a lot of them when they get exploited on construction sites.
I agree, and I'll tell you, I'll agree this, and I'll tell you from somebody who's been through, and here's the truth, to some shitholes in this world.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been to places, and I can't blame those families for seeking a better life.
Yeah.
I can't blame them, and they're doing everything they can possibly to get a better life. But I do think as a society, we do have a right to vet who comes through.
Of course.
If you're going to vaccine,
Of course.
Look, if I can't even get on
Who would disagree with that?
well, a lot of people. You're going to force me to get a vaccine, but you're not going to check the status of someone coming across the border. You got to check my ID before I can get a flight, but you can't. Someone can just come across the border.
I never got vaccinated. No way.
Yeah,
And I know a lot of anecdotal evidence of people that got vaccinated and then they had heart problems like that, including my father.
well, I was a little bit of a coward. I had basically. The truth was, in reality, I didn't have really a choice. I was at McCarter in English, and it was basically, I really didn't have much of a choice to get vaccinated if I would
Yeah,
keep my
I think
job.
that's terrible.
I didn't have COVID before I got vaccinated. I got vaccinated and a booster, and then I got COVID 3 times. My grandfather died because of COVID. He was a World War II veteran. No, my mistake. He was a veteran during World War II. My pappy was not my grandfather. But he had Alzheimer's, and he was in a nursing home. And what happened was they brought individuals back who had COVID from the hospital, and
Yeah.
it wiped out the nursing home.
Yeah. My wife works in a nursing home, and it's still an issue, like COVID ripping through, and it's like the plague.
Right.
Real quick though,
Yeah.
not to drop little things, but when you talk about BLM, Black Lives Matters and stuff, okay. When you step on a guy's neck and over 12 minutes kill the guy, someone's got to protest.
And this is
Oh, I don't think. Well,
I mean,
think-
that George
I don't
Floyd
blame-
shit is
I don't
just
blame. I don't
terrible.
Blame, I don't blame that. And to think that. So here's my personal.
And think about all the people that were killed by cops over the years, and it was what did they call it, Mark?
like self-defense.
No,
or like,
a medical incident. Oh, they had a medical incident.
Oh yeah, after being shot like 10 times.
No, we're just
Yeah.
whatever. And
No,
then the
well-
body cams, you know,
Yeah.
ended
Well,
a
there's
lot
a
of
cou-
that.
I-
Those
no, but
body cams, I think, are such a plus on so many different levels.
I agree because it's a great form of self-defense as well.
Yeah.
I think
Agreed.
I think the majority of men and women in uniform in the police have put their life on the line day in and
Absolutely.
day out.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things that happens is when you're dealing with, and there is a criminal element in this country.
Yeah.
And they are vile and aggressive.
Evil exists in the world.
And that's right. And when you're dealing with that, what happens sometimes, and that's why you kind of in the SEAL teams we call it cutting away. Like if your main chute has a malfunction, you got to cut it away before you open up your reserve, or it could get entangled. And I think sometimes what happens is, it's just like guys doing combat deployment after combat. You need to cut away because it's just, we all have a point where we tipping point. And I think sometimes that would happen where you almost like you'll see nurses, they're a little like immune to suffering.
Yes.
And I think what happened in every once in a while is I think it's isolated situations. I think in that case, Floyd, he had some serious criminal history. I think in that case, there was actually something going on between those two because they were actually, I think, bouncers in the same club or something.
Oh.
George Floyd and the police officer?
Yeah. And so I think it was more of a personal note, but either way, what happened there was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't blame people for protesting. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to call it the facts as I call them. Floyd had, I believe he had some assault on a pregnant girl and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that.
Let's assume he had a rap sheet.
And issues like that. But what happened to him was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't blame people for protesting. They absolutely have a right and to call for justice. But where I think they got played, and they got played, just like a lot of these college kids are getting played now,
Yeah.
is there, in my opinion, that the vast majority of men and women in law enforcement are good people, put their lives on the
Oh,
country.
absolutely.
100%.
And what happened was, imagine this, and I can tell you this is one of the things with a veteran, right? You go to war. I have friends that died, do some very hard things. And then people questioning my loyalty, to our nation, me as a good
Who
man.
questioned your loyalty to your
That's
nation?
not too
Well,
many
not
people.
who, but in what context have
yeah,
you heard?
that's what I'm talking about.
Don't social media content
Yeah.
comments are just totally worthless. I always say, like, if Jesus Christ had a
Oh,
Facebook account and made a post about something, he would get hate
Yeah.
stuff back.
Well, he got crucified.
Well,
right?
well, yeah, but even today, okay,
You're
if
gonna
Gandhi in 2024,
He got murdered too.
yeah, but in 2024 came back to life. I don't know, Mother Teresa. Let me pick someone better.
Martin Luther King got killed as well.
But Mother Teresa didn't. Okay, so let's say Mother Teresa had a Facebook account and posted about the kids she's taking care of. She would get hate comments back.
Yeah, you're just doing this for the likes. You suck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
there's people that
There's
sit in their
social
house
media whores for sure.
and they live in their phone. They live like in their
Yeah.
thing, and it's just it's terrible. Like if you take I believe a chart and you chart teen suicide with the growth of social media, you'll see on the chart it'll be like a correlation. And I think the biggest thing with these kids and everything is this social media. And when you interact with someone on social media, it's not a real human interaction, in my opinion. It's a bot. Like I called someone today, and every time I call, they don't answer. Okay, I put the phone down, and I get a text message immediately, and it says, "Can I call you later?" It's just an AI response. It's not really a thing. I ignore it, and once again, I don't know what point I was making there, but my point is that social media is terrible. It's
Yeah.
not like a real human interaction.
I was walking my dog this morning, and it was this girl probably in middle school walking to the bus stop, literally holding
Oh my
her
God.
phone.
The kids can't
walking
talk
the
anymore.
entire time, just staring down at her phone. And I totally agree. It's like the conversation we're having now is so much more organic and real and human. If we're on social media, I always think of the example of like someone like playing a guitar, like say in a coffee shop. The comments would be like, "You suck," like,
Yeah.
"You so lame," like, "Kill yourself, you loser." And if
Yeah.
that person was in front of me or whoever playing
would
guitar,
never say that.
no one would ever say that. They'd like maybe go home and be like, I don't know, she wasn't that good. But you would never see that. And like now it's just like, and I frankly, my opinion is I think that has contributed so much to like the
angst.
tribalism
Yes,
and
it
everything
has.
that's going on
No doubt.
as well, because you then surround yourself with people who think like you and you get these algorithms that send you ideas that align with what you think. Yeah. And it just keeps over and over reinforcing what you're thinking. You know, it's my friends and I the other day, we're all like, oh, pull up Instagram and like show like, you know, what pops up before you even type anything in. And it's like skiing, surfing, girls, like, all this stuff. And all of us are like, you know, look, everyone has the exact same thing. And if I was into like, I don't know, whatever, like, you know, swords and Japanese culture, it would probably would come up this before I could even type anything in. It's just so wild.
It's like music. It amplifies your, music can amplify your mood, and social media, because the algorithms can really amplify your interest.
I just think about too, like the way, and there's all these obviously documentaries and articles and everything out there about like social media and the rise of it and the like contributions it has and like mental health. But you think about our ancestors like walking around in the woods and there's gray stones and, you know, brown and green trees. And then you see this bright colored flower and you're like, wow, you're attracted to that. Now you flick your phone open and you're bombarded with color and you like flick the screen and you get another influx. Like, so those dopamine hits that you're getting, those spikes, like it's, I personally, like, I totally agree. It's having such a negative overall effect.
Well, I don't know. It's having one negative effect as well, for sure. But it's also having a different effect, because we all have, there's an advantage. And we were talking about Joe Rogan and how basically his podcast is challenging corporate media, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is Jerry was talking about the evolution of communication. Well, this is a part of the evolution of communication. Is basically now the way we're interacting is so different now. And it is this weird web that we're a part of, right? Mm-hmm. And there's different parts of this web. And one of the side effects is, look, there's absolutely, you look at advocacy. Why was in Vietnam they so successful in ending the Vietnam War? It wasn't on the battlefield. It was because they got college students to get on the street, and they got the cameras in front of it. And so a lot of every foreign intelligence agency in the world got wind of that. And to think that you don't have a lot of foreign actors involved in some of this stuff, you absolutely do, especially in an election year. It's just the coincidences are too great. So I do think, look, any tool, you have to realize how it can be used and how
Right.
it can hurt.
Yeah.
And I think for kids, they're more susceptible to, you know, cyberbullying or things like that. But think about the Arab Spring movement a few years back.
Yeah.
That was all mobilized via Facebook.
Yeah.
And even now, if you look at some of these marches, it's same type of blueprint. I think, how do I try to use Facebook in a way like, okay, I got shut down on LinkedIn, or I have 28,000 plus followers on LinkedIn.
Wow.
And I used to get periodically like,
Bill, just to cut you off,
Yeah.
Jerry over the years has mentioned you, and I was like, I recognize that name. I'm friends with you on LinkedIn from like probably law school. Like you must have done a blast, like friend request or something. But I'm like, I know this guy. You kept popping up, so it's funny.
And what are the things I go, okay, they shut down Trump, and then how many other guys that they shut down who had disagreements with COVID? And so one of the things, my way to operate is when I went through breacher school, that was one of my quals. And the job as a breacher is in urban combat, when you're doing interior work, the entrance, the doors to rooms is the most dangerous. We call it the funnel of death. And even when we do stuff with like simunition rounds, you'll see that the framework around the doors get painted, right? And so one of the jobs of the breacher is to breach that entrance point as fast as possible. And we'll do other things, like we'll do diversionary explosives, or we'll do flashbangs to disorient the combatants inside, right? To increase our chances. But one of the jobs I learned as a breacher was because sometimes, like, okay, they'll have like a New York drop bar on there. If I'm smashing a sledgehammer and nothing's happening, the goal is, okay, this tool isn't working, work to the next tool. All right, okay, I'm going to use the holy bar. The holy bar is not working. Sledgehammer's not working. All right, I'm going to just blow this thing. All right, and no matter what, I'm going to continue to adapt and move. And if we look at technology, technology is like a wave. It's one wave collapses, another wave's coming. And so how do you best ride it? And so I'm an advocate now. Now, first I was a veterans advocate, 100%, because I ran into a bunch of woke professors at undergrad, at Rutgers, at law school. And now I'm always going to be a veterans advocate. But then I became a free speech advocate. And then I saw what's happening to Jewish Americans, and I'm not Jewish, but I've been to war. I've been to war against jihadists. I've seen it. I think what's happened to Israel is wrong. And a humanity type of perspective, I don't think they're trying to commit genocide. I think they're going out of the way to try to eliminate Hamas as tactfully as they can. I think they're losing the PR war. They're getting crushed in the PR war. I think Israel is in serious trouble. Their existence is in serious jeopardy. And what's happening on college campuses now, the way they're treating Jewish students is horrible. I'm standing up against that. So I found myself as an advocate. My platform is this. It's just like in Breacher School. I believe this. I believe I'm going to speak up. I'm going to do my best to hold the moral high ground, 100%. But I'm going to engage. And that's like this platform is I'm going to engage. And I'm hoping that the legal community kind of wakes up, because I think one of the biggest issues we haven't talked about now is two things with the legal community. One is all these bar associations, right? How many bar associations are strictly geared around gender, sexual orientation, or racial makeup, right? You have the Asian Pacific American Lawyers Association, Association of Black Women Lawyers, Haitian American Lawyers Association, Hispanic Bar Association, Korean American Lawyers Association, New Jersey Muslim Lawyers Association, New Jersey Women's Lawyers Association, South Asian Bar Association, Women Lawyers of Bergen County, LGBTQ Rights Section Association, and now you have the Jewish Bar Association. I disagree. Now, am I glad that
Would it be permissible to have a
white
male, Anglo-Saxon Protestant Bar Association? And I'm serious when I ask that question. I'm not being facetious.
Yeah. Is the counter argument that is what the Bar Association predominantly is that it's made up, a large part of, white males or what? And is that the idea that this is why there should be all these other groups because it seems to create an us versus them mentality, when the mentality should be, hey, we're all attorneys. We've all, gone and fought the same fight. And
what about the Bar Association? What are you saying about that? I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a group, right?
Well,
you have a veterans group. There's nothing wrong with having
Mark kind of hit the target that my perspective was this. You ever see the movie Divergent? Divergent is like sci-fi movie, and they break down the individuals to, they call it factions, right? You have basically these different factions, and it's almost like this prison mentality, right, where in the warden or the prison establishment, they actually control the prison population by basically playing one prison gang versus another prison gang, and that's how they influence a lot of control. Now, my take on the legal community, and it starts from law school or even in undergrad. If you look at the majority of the scholarships available, like I started the first scholarship for veterans at Rutgers, because me and the first student group at Rutgers, because me and my buddy, who was another Iraq veteran, John Cosby, when we got there, we saw all these fraternities and sororities, and all these student groups. They were all represented, but there was nothing for veterans.
I remember the minority student program was huge at Rutgers. That was what it was called, like the minority student program. And I always kind of did feel a little bit, well, I'm not a minority student. Kind of.
You're not the flavor they're looking for. To be sincere, that's the truth. Now, to me, diversity is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But to me, diversity, I think diversity by race is true, by religion is true, even by sexual orientation is true. But to me, the most important diversity is by intellectual perspectives and ideas and framework. And even if you look at these bar associations, they're not geared towards, really geared towards the prominent ones to different areas of law, like different guilds, like, okay, insurance,
Yeah,
okay,
bankruptcy or-
yeah.
yeah.
They're
You don't-
geared towards your skin color,
Yes.
and that's your point.
That's my point.
Yeah.
And to me, that is one of it builds an us v them mentality. Now, I think, and one of the things,
Can you be a member of the Hispanic Bar Association without a 23andMe that comes up positive with Hispanic? Can
Yeah,
you
like,
be a
what's the
member of the
criteria?
Muslim without?
I,
Or do they exclude?
that's so funny. And I don't know the answer. I had imagined that you could attend the event and be an ally, but I don't know whether you could be a member. Now, it's so funny when we were talking about Animal Farm. I know there was a recent Rutgers Law event, and it had some big dinner, and it was absolutely an elitist event,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't see too many white people invited, and so I don't know if it was purposely excluded or not.
Right.
But the optics, it came across that way, and so my message to the bar is, I disagree with. I think the original concept was, look, okay, we need to look out for each other. Like I look out for veterans, right? I do look out for veterans, and the truth is, I am biased towards veterans. I can't lie. It's just
Yeah.
the truth,
Yeah.
right? But I disagree with having, when they talk about, and even the CLEs now for New Jersey and New York, it's basically they're promoting this propaganda, which is basically CRT stuff, and it's not.
What's CRT?
The
critical race theory. So I disagree with pushing a political ideology and making it a legal requirement.
Bill, I was involved with a bar organization, a legal organization. I won't name it, but and my involvement in it required me to attend mandatory diversity, equity, and inclusion training.
Yeah.
And so I went to this, and I think it was an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, there was this woman up there that was teaching me why I need to feel guilty and that I'm racist. And I'm like raising my hand, and I'm like, but wait a minute. And I'm asking questions, and it was just like insulting that someone told me I need to be trained in how not to be a racist. I found it insulting. I mean, it's just, and I think it causes, I think in many ways, again, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when you had sicking German shepherds and fire hoses on African Americans and stuff, terrible. And yes, maybe those people needed mandatory training or something.
They need to go straight to jail.
Yeah, well, that too, and affirmative action. But in 2024, to require me as a prerequisite to my involvement with the organization to attend diversity, equity, and inclusion training, to train me how not to be, I found it insulting, and I can see how it can cause divisions. We've at one point, most of my clients were non-English speaking immigrant workers and stuff, and I don't know. I guess it's my aspiration for a colorblind society.
You're not alone, and I think what it does is it basically puts a stereotype, a base point stereotype that we are racist, or that individuals in society are racist. And I don't think that. I think most Americans are good people. I agree
with that.
And I think most Americans don't really give a shit about race. I really don't care what sex you are. Like, if you're a consenting adult, I could care less.
Right.
Like, what I do care about, when you try to frame me,
yeah,
or you try to indoctrinate me in your political ideas, or you try to exclude me and from opportunities to excel.
See, like you fought for our nation, and again, I'm not trying to patronize or anything like that, but I look up at Navy SEALs like, wow, You know, they're like the
Yeah.
D1 athletes, you know, in all that. And you took a stand for our country. You put your life on the line for our country. You went through some horrible stuff and lost a lot of friends for our country. And you have this no. It's kind of like that scene in A Few Good Men when she says, like, you took a stand. It's Debbie Moore, forget her character, but she's like, he took a stand and not on my watch, you know, that kind of thing. And I think it's really cool that you're doing that now in an intellectual way.
Yeah.
Like you're taking that kind of mentality and you're transferring it into trying to make our society better. And I'm the first to admit I'm not always right, and I'm sure you don't think you're right on every single issue. But what's almost more important is that you're taking a stand, you're exercising a free speech, and you're using that like, I'm not going to be afraid, you know. You were fearless in combat, you were fearless in buds and everything, and you're taking that. I don't care if it's McCarter in English. If there's something wrong and I don't agree with it, you take a stand, and I think that's like awesome, and we need more of that stuff today. And frankly, and I'm not patronizing, I'm just telling you what I really think. And I think there's so many people in Congress that are just completely spineless, and like profiles in courage are few and far between. So I think just expressing a thought that I think it's really cool that you're taking that
Yeah.
and transferring it to make society better
Well,
and stuff. I think that's really cool.
Jerry and Mark, you guys are too. You're a very successful law firm. You're out here and you're contributing to the open market of ideas in a legal community that, in my opinion, is very woke. And in an environment now, you know, where you got a guy like me on, and once this goes public, absolutely, you know, people are not going to be. Some people on the other side are not going to be so open-minded, you know. So you're absolutely taking a stand. And one of the things that I hope we do, gentlemen, is I hope that we encourage more other intellectuals, other leaders in the legal community to take a stand, because I believe in diversity. I think it is beautiful, but I think diversity means intellectual perspectives as well. And I'm against cancel culture.
Yeah.
Don't cancel my opportunities, my ability to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, because I'm a critical thinker, and I publicly challenge your public statements.
Well, it's funny when people who are in favor of diversity, as long as it's their diversity.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like we could, you know, so.
You know, you brought up a good point, because one of the things you stated earlier is when I was talking about how in my opinion, especially Rutgers and a lot of these, you know, there's certain points, things that happen. Well, I mentioned one of them earlier with Martin Luther King in Alabama. But I also think there was another big kind of like eye-awakening moment when you had the presidents of MIT,
Oh yeah.
Harvard,
Oh,
and
that was.
UPenn.
Oh.
That they
Who
tried
who
to-
prepped them for
Yeah, I
that?
was gonna say, they
who
tried to-
prepped them for that testimony?
And it was horrible. And they couldn't even say that promoting genocide against Jews was against student
In
policy.
some
Yeah.
circumstances, it depends on the context.
Is that hate
I mean,
speech?
Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Depends.
So to the average American, they were like, whoa, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And now I think when you see all the chaos in these campuses, we're like, wow, that's really a deep-rooted problem.
Yeah.
And so I think there's academia, they've lost the beauty of valuing critical thinkers and real free speech. And I think one of the things with Rutgers is you said to me, well, how do we fix it? And one of the things is, do we negate the woke zealots? And I say, well, everyone should have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
That's my biggest, really my biggest thing that's happening in a lot of these big law firms
Yeah.
and a lot of the law schools. If you basically, and it's happened in a lot of different industries, where you have political purges, right? And you saw it on social
Well, that's
media.
why tenure is very important for college professors.
Yeah, that's it, right? And well, what happens with tenure?
What wild thing, by the way, tenure. Like
I think it's important for college. What's the irony of all this is when you talk liberal conservative, liberal was supposed to be like free thinking and open, like John Locke,
Yes.
Thomas Hobbes,
Yeah.
who started the upon which the Constitution was based
Yeah,
was
100%.
liberal thinking and open thinking.
Yep.
As long as it's my liberal thinking, not yours, I guess is the idea.
But so for college professors, I hear what you're saying. You're right with tenure. It's funny. My mom and my brother are both teachers. And what other job though do you essentially get a guarantee that you can't get fired unless you do something so egregious? So I think tenure's got its pros and its cons.
Well, one of the things I'm concerned about too, it's this, look at, we talk about the law, right? And there's similar to tenure, right? The thing about tenure is you're supposed to have this freedom, right? This freedom that your livelihood's not at stake. And it's the same thing, you look at judicial independence, right? Well, Jesus, man, look at judicial independence now. They'll come to your house and they'll pressure you and your family by having a mob outside. Like, do you think that's free? I think there's a distinction
that
between
happen?
free speech and tenure. It happened
Well,
recently to several Supreme Court justices with the
But didn't somebody just fly a flag outside of Kennedy's house or Alito? I mean, I just saw an article recently. There's some election decision coming up, and they went and planted a flag on, I think it was Alito's lawn. I don't know why that's the name that's coming to mind. And it's just a real quick aside. It's funny. I talk about teachers getting tenure. I guess judges as well. Then at some point you can get tenure, but I feel like that's a different.
I think judges need tenure.
I agree. They have to
think
be.
federal judges need to be lifetime appointments.
It's so funny because gentlemen,
In my opinion, that's what saved our democracy after January 6th was the judiciary.
to think that judges are politically independent, I don't know, because just the fact that how they're appointed, I think they're political operators. To be sincere, and if you can pretty much know in advance the majority of the time which way judges are going to rule by their appointments.
I disagree. Well,
I
disagree with that.
When you
I've been in front of a lot of judges.
tenure's
that
supposed to
litigated.
have judicial, but then you can see how the cons to it, right? Where
Yeah.
they become mentally incapacitated. Like we have a president now who's mentally incapacitated. He's a straight puppet.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that
He
one.
gave a good State of
I
the
don't
Union a
necessarily-
couple months ago.
I don't necessarily agree with that one.
I think he's incapacitated. I do think there's history can show that there have been Supreme Court judges that have been mentally
Oh,
incapacitated.
for sure.
And they kept them hanging around for the vote. So I think that's one of the cons to having
The lifetime appointment.
yeah,
and
lifetime
stuff, yeah.
appointments. And I think that's one of the cons to having having tenure professors, because these professors, just like judges, are very elite.
Yeah.
They're in these ivory towers, and one of the reasons why politicians or elected officials are elected is they're supposed to be basically accountable to the people. At a certain point, if your decisions are so out of whack, sooner or later the people will decide to put in somebody new. When you I don't know. It's the same issue with having these not having term limits. One of the things you were talking about now.
Yeah.
We have Mitch McConnell. He's incapacitated.
Yeah, term limits in Congress. I agree with
Hey,
that.
I'm getting a signal from Oscar before.
Oscar.
What were you trying to say, Oscar?
Oh no, I'm just going back to your thing about the flag. It was just that upside down flag. That it was.
So we say pull that one up there, Oscar or
Yeah,
Jamie.
Like pulling it up, it's like flag. It's like,
Jamie. Yeah.
What do you got? What are you pulling up?
it's an upside down flag.
Yeah, but we don't know what
Oh.
it was. If someone put that there or Alito
Well,
did it.
Lugo
Or,
went out apparently. I think you were right. He went on. He talked about it or whatever.
he probably put it in the dark or something and didn't know it was upside down.
Oscar, can you do me a favor? Can you Google up protest outside Supreme Court judges' houses?
Well, I think
I think
it's
that
like
was Brett Kavanaugh's house, I think, maybe.
I think you're right.
well, you talk about like we've touched on law enforcement, what it's like to be in law enforcement now. I do sympathize a lot with judges as well. Some of the things you're seeing, especially
Yes.
these federal judges, like you've got people going to their houses. There was a judge, was it in New York, where her husband or son was shot? Like, it's
That
just.
happened in New Jersey.
Yeah, Salas.
Well,
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
Salas is terrible.
it is terrible. What about who's the senator from New York? Starts with the S.
Chuck Schumer.
He made a couple statements where I thought were very intimidating to judges as well. Look, I think there's a distinction between coercion, intimidation, and free speech, and I think
Yeah.
that line gets crossed quite often. Quite often, and we talk about the look. Where there's a problem, there's a problem when you got a mob of people outside your house and you're a judge. There's a problem, and that's happening, and it's being allowed to happen. That's coercion. That's intimidation. You know,
I agree with that. I think if you want to protest a judge, do it outside the courthouse.
Yeah, don't make it personal.
or do it in a podcast. Do it, get a petition.
Yeah,
There's a lot of different ways. You don't go to somebody's house.
yeah.
What does the Supreme Court say on picketing?
You're allowed to picket.
You're allowed to picket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else you got on your list, Bill? Anything else you
Bill,
want to get off
can-
your?
I know
think about?
I know you got your list, and I want to
What do you got?
hit yours. I want to hit a couple questions I had because I did a little bit of homework. You're an impressive guest and all that, and I listened to a little bit of another. I think it was an interview where you mentioned that you're featured in like David Goggins' book.
Yeah,
But it's
honored
not-
to be in that book. His book.
Yeah, not so much I say featured in his book, but more impressively is I feel like a lot of people know who David Goggins is and
Yep.
things, but you went through the same Buds school with him,
Yeah,
which is what's Buds again?
BUDS is the acronym. It stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. We were class 231 together.
Okay, wow. And he I don't know if you're cool with it. He calls you the white David Goggins, basically. Which if I feel like I know Jerry knows who David Goggins is. A lot of people do. That sounds like a pretty heck of an accolade.
I tell you, it was definitely an honor to be with him. And you know what it kind of reminds me of, Mark, is if you have a really good professor, right, or you have a couple, like a study group, a couple guys you're studying with, it really upgrades your performance.
Yeah,
What do they say? A high rise raises all ships.
Yep.
we say that with the firm. Like all tides rise with the
Yes.
ship. Like because so Bud School is basically what? That's like you go through multiple phases. It's like SEAL team training. There's something called like Hell Week.
Yeah, that's right. So BUDS there's 3 phases. There's the first phase. It's basically the beatdown phase.
Yeah.
It's very physically and psychologically taxing. They're really trying to break you
Mm-hmm.
and see who wants to be there. You can quit at any time. And then the second phase is dive phase. It's the second highest attrition rate is pool comp. They're trying to see, they're testing a lot of your underwater.
Like you're tying knots underwater and things, right?
Well, you tie knots underwater in first phase. It's deck cord knots.
Okay.
And the big thing in dive phase is pool comp, and it's pool competency. And what they do there is you have a open water scuba circuit 2080s, and they give you a series of problems you have to solve underwater where you're on some very long breath holds. And I kind of described it a little bit. I don't know if the cameras can see me or not. but
Are we good on time, Oscar?
Just telling Jerry right about the time we're break time.
Let's take a break.
okay.